Every year for my birthday, I would take 1 week off for self-care. So of course, for my 36th birthday, it wasn't any different. I reserved one of the nicest resorts in Las Vegas and got my sister Anaya and my best friend Shanice to come with me. The plane ride was very comfortable, having slept halfway through it, but it was entertaining too. The plane was half full, and the three of us being in bulkhead seats right next to each other had the opportunity to mess around, playing games and telling jokes. The landing of the plane has always been the scariest part for me, then taken off. So of course when it was time to land, I held onto Shanice's hands as she proceeded to laugh at my discomfort. I couldn't wait to get off the plane, to get our luggage and get out of there. Once we were outside the airport, we started to question if we needed to rent a car. We ultimately decided not to, since we most likely would be walking up and down the Las Vegas Strip for the main portion of the trip. We got a taxi and made our way to the resort. When we arrived, we were immediately greeted by the valet personnel that got us a bellhop to help us unload our luggage. The sweet bellhop gentleman led us to the front desk and we started our check-in process. Since we already made reservations, checking in was straightforward. We got our room together to save money so that we could have more fun. When we finally got to a room, we spent a few hours admiring the decor and taking silly pictures. Being that it was only 5 p.m., we freshened up and headed out to the strip. When we got hungry, we wanted to try different types of pizzerias and have a few drinks. After stuffing our faces, we got way too full. On our way back, we stopped by the Bellagio fountain to take pictures and watch the beautiful fountain show. The streets were filled with people celebrating and recording their moments. We would occasionally stop to watch and record the different type of performers that captivated and entertained us. When we finally got back to the resort, we stayed up to talk some more and mapped out some of the things that we were going to do the next day. That next morning, I was jolted awake by a woman screaming. I was terrified and started looking around the room just to see that we had fallen asleep with the TV on and a scary movie was playing. Still a little shaken, I looked over to see everyone was still asleep. When I looked over at the clock, it was 7 a.m. So I took that opportunity and got up and got ready before everyone else and then woke up Anaya and Shanice. When the three of us were finally ready, we headed towards our first attraction for the day. On our way there, we noticed a young man sitting on a wooden stool. He was wearing a wrinkled gray suit and brown scuffed up shoes. Since we were walking up from his right side, we didn't notice until we were a bit closer that he was holding a very old looking ventriloquist doll. The doll had on a bright red dress that was covered in yellow polka dots. It had on a pair of yellow shoes to match. The doll's hair was blonde and kind of dirty. It passed its back, covering up the man's arm. I don't really like these type of performers, plus I always get creeped out by dolls. I wasn't too keen on watching him perform, and I was ready to just walk past him. But Anaya has a fascination with these type of performers. So when she pulled out $5 and tipped the man, I wasn't shocked at all. Because we were now closer, I could tell how lifelike the doll was. This sent shivers down my body. In fact, the doll looked as if its eyes were following our movements. I thought my eyes were deceiving me, actually, when I saw it blink several times and made a weird expression as if its face moved. The young man looked up at us and had a creepy smile spread across his face. He then adjusted himself and the doll he was holding, and then he started to speak.
Meet Susie, the fortune teller. She will answer any 3 questions you have. She gets to ask you 1 question in return. But you have to answer truthfully. If you lie or refuse to answer, she will follow you, committing mischievous acts until...
Before the man could finish, he let out a painful groan. He leaned over, breathing a bit heavy, and winced. He shook his left arm violently, as if he was trying to shake the doll off. But in almost a robotic trance, he stopped, leaned back, and smiled. The energetic and happy tone he had was gone. He even had a cold, lifeless expression on his face. He didn't move for a few seconds. Shanice asked him if he was okay. Then a weird female voice broke the silence.
Back up. He's fine.
It startled all 3 of us. We couldn't tell where the voice was coming from at first. The man now with furrowed brows and a forced smile fixed the doll in his left hand, as if nothing happened. The doll's mouth started to move. We heard a female voice again. This made Anaya and Shanice relax, as the man's lips weren't moving at all. It was pretty impressive, and I wouldn't deny that. But I kept looking at the man's face, who continued to look like his soul had left his body. I remained reserved as Shanice and Anaya got more excited about the whole ordeal.
Hi, I'm Susie. I can answer any 3 questions you have. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's about your past or future. Just remember, I get to ask you just 1 question, and all you have to do is tell the truth. If not, you'll get bad
the voice said as the doll's mouth started to move. Shanice became a child all over again and started to ask her 3 questions. Her first question was,
Will I get a job promotion at work?
Once you start to show your assertive side, yes.
the voice replied. Her second question was,
Can you tell me when I will die or how I will die?
the doll's head seemed to move and turned as if it was thinking.
I can't tell you past your 80th birthday, so I'm assuming you live for a long time.
It replied. Shanice looked at us and smiled at the good news. She then asked,
What does the future hold for me?
Nothing special, since you're a pretty boring person, like these questions.
We were all taken aback by this response and stepped back. The doll just kept staring at Shanice and in a playful tone said,
Just kidding. You have an amazing future. Many great things will come your way. Now it's my turn. What's a lie? You've told Jada.
I looked at Shanice worried, and she gave me a weirded out look back, while Anai snickered and looked at both of us oblivious of what was going on. Shanice awkwardly replied.
I've told her that I hadn't taken some of her clothes when I did. She always found out anyways.
There was a brief moment of silence, until in a low tone, it replied.
I should have been more specific. That wasn't the lie I was looking for, but I guess I have to take it, since I can only ask one question.
Anaya started laughing, but me and Shanice didn't. I guess Shanice realized, like I did, that the doll said my name when we didn't mention our names at all. I stupidly thought maybe it was a fluke, but I continued to stay out of the interaction. As I made eye contact with Shanice, showing her that we should leave, Anaya playfully nudged me and said,
Come on, enjoy yourself.
She looked at the man and said,
It's her birthday week, and she can't even relax for a few minutes.
The man, remaining emotionless, nodded his head, but didn't answer. Instead, the doll looked up at me, and the voice said,
Happy birthday, Jada. Would you like an extra question to ask me?
I gazed over at Shanice with wide eyes. It did freaking say my name. I didn't imagine it. We didn't imagine it. It said my name. Shanice crossed her arms and moved back a little. The doll looked at both of us and gave off a weird smile that quickly disappeared. This caused Shanice to cover up her mouth with her hand, moving back away a bit more. Anai looked away from us, not realizing the situation, and thinking we were just a bunch of big mood killers.
Fine, I'll go next.
Anai said. Anai started with what she thought was a trick question.
Will I ever find love?
You might want to get divorced first.
It replied. Anaya started laughing, but we didn't find it funny, since she didn't have any indication or her ring on her finger showing that she was married, even though she is. Anaya continued to ignore this and asked her next question.
What's my favorite food?
Homemade spicy vegetable pizza.
It answered. Anaya looked shocked and said,
Pretty good guess, Susie.
It wasn't a guess. Hurry up and ask your last question, because
I have a good
question for you.
the voice replied, but this time its voice was a bit deeper and sounded a bit distorted, giving me a bad achy feeling in my stomach. I started to pull on Anaya and Shanice, attempting to lead them away from the street performer, but Anaya wanted to finish the exchange and pulled away from me. Anaya leaned pretty close to the doll, and the man calmly told her,
Please stop antagonizing her. Just ask a question, and don't do that again.
Anaya smirked, placing her right hand on her hip, and took a deep, exaggerated breath. She expressed to him how she thought his performance was pretty great. He just replied,
Please finish the whole conversation with Susie. You have to. You won't be able.
Once again, the man was suddenly stopped mid-sentence by some unforeseen obstacle. Anaya finally got a bit creeped out, but not enough to walk away. She went ahead with her last question.
So, Susie, what are the next lottery numbers?
The doll looked at her and said,
I can only answer questions about you, so I can't answer that question.
Anaya got annoyed and rolled her eyes. As I started to walk away, holding both Shanice and Anaya's arms again, it spoke, with an almost angry tone.
I didn't get to ask my question.
Go ahead.
Anaya replied,
What's the secret you've been hiding from everyone for 13 years?
Immediately, Anaya's face turned white, and she became sick to the point she almost threw up. I watched her catching herself, leaning forward, then reaching back to untie her kinky curly hair. She massaged her head and ran her fingers down her curls. Anaya then crossed her arms and said,
I don't have a secret to share, Susie.
while glaring at the man who was still lifeless now and looking straight forward. The situation got too creepy, so me and Shani started to pull her away. This time she came along with us. The man started to yell at her direction that she really needed to answer the question. As he was talking, we heard a female voice simultaneously telling him,
Shut up.
Right after, the man got quiet, and suddenly we heard him let out an agonizing scream. And then he started yelling for us to please stop. Don't leave him here with it. This commotion caused other passerbyers to crowd around him, trying to figure out what was wrong and how they could help. During this, we slipped away. When we could no longer see the man and started to relax, we heard a deep, angry voice.
You should have answered the question. Tell the truth, Anaya.
It sounded as if it was directly behind us. We didn't turn around to try to see what it was or who it was, and just rushed towards the busier part of the strip. After a while, we started to get over what happened. Shanice said,
How did it know your names? We never mentioned our names to that man, but it told you happy birthday by name, and it said Anaya's name.
Anaya looked at Shanice, finally realizing what she said. I just replied, it freaked me out too, and tried to get you two away from him the first time, but you guys didn't move. Anaya shrugged her shoulders and said,
I was too into it, and I didn't think much of it. Why didn't you two mention it the moment it happened?
I just looked at her and rolled my eyes, saying, why the fuck would I say anything in front of him to get us potentially cursed or something? Anaya looked at me, remembering something, and muttered,
What the hell was with that damn voice change? Like he couldn't keep a constant pitch or something.
Shanice acknowledged what she said and joked,
For real, like dude, go perfect your skills first before trying to perform in front of people.
Both of them looked at each other and started laughing. I turned around and kept walking, and just told them, let's keep going towards our first destination. After shopping around for a bit and going to some very interesting attractions, the incident became a distant thought. We eventually got hungry and decided to enjoy a meal at a seafood restaurant. After we waited a bit, we were seated at a booth, we ordered our food, and waited patiently for our meals. Once our food arrived, we started to dig in and enjoy ourselves. While having a silly conversation, Anaya started screaming. She was looking down at her food that she's been eating from the past few minutes. We followed her gaze and saw a bunch of cockroaches just spilling out from the middle of the food. It was like it was a bottomless pit, and it was landing all over her and crawling all over the table, where they eventually started to make their way towards our food. Me and Shanice quickly got up, disgusted, and we noticed Anaya wasn't moving. So we tried to pull her up, thinking that she was in too much shock to move. But it was as if she was glued down to the seat. Anaya kept screaming and trying to get up herself, but nothing was working. Suddenly, Shanice let go of Anaya's arms, falling backwards on the floor. Shanice started pointing at the bottom of the table while hyperventilating. Another patron started to scream as well and ran away from their table. I didn't understand what was going on, so I backed up a little and looked under the table. I was greeted by a large, pale, humanoid-like figure holding onto Anaya's lower body. It was wearing a bright red dress that was covered in yellow polka dots. Its blonde hair reached all the way down to the ground. It looked up at me, and it looked like a deformed ventriloquist doll, like that damn Susie doll. It started to smile, showing off its razor-sharp teeth. Its smile reached both sides of its face, where its ears were supposed to be. It continued to hold onto Anaya as I kept trying to pull her up. I started kicking underneath the table. I yelled at Shanice to snap out of it, and she eventually joined me, kicking the creature under the table. People started gathering to see what was happening. A waitress came to try and settle us down, but ultimately ran away screaming at the top of her lungs after seeing what was scaring us. The thing just continued to hold onto Anaya. Then a creepy, familiar voice eventually came out from underneath the table, saying,
You need to tell the truth, Anaya. What's the secret?
Say it!
Anaya started yelling for us to help her, even though we were trying our best. I reached over and grabbed the fork off the table and started stabbing the thing in the face with it several times. The creature let out a disturbing sound. This caused a few of the guests to run out of the establishment, but just like that, it vanished. My hands and the fork were covered with this brown substance that I'm assuming was the creature's blood. When I looked underneath the table, I noticed that it left some disgusting long strands of dirty blonde hair all over Anaya's legs and the floor. The few patrons that stayed behind to help us kept freaking out because they also witnessed what happened. When the restaurant manager came and saw the mess, he just assumed that it was the plate of roaches and hair everywhere that caused the commotion. The waitress and the other customer tried their best to try to back up our story, but most people didn't believe them. We were freaked out and we didn't know what the hell was going on. The restaurant manager didn't know what to do either, and just apologized and told us that we didn't have to pay for a meal. We didn't care about that, and we definitely weren't going to pay for that anyways. The restaurant closed down soon after we left, in order to clean and solve what they thought was a weird infestation problem. We were all completely on edge, and decided to take a taxi back to the resort so that we could make it back faster. While in the taxi, we tried to understand what happened, but didn't yet connect the dots. My self-care week was ruined. It wasn't going as planned, and I was completely over it. We made it back to the resort and walked into a room. Right as we turned on the light, we realized that the room was ransacked. We quickly went right back out and made our way down to the front desk to report the problem. One security guard went back up with us to the room, and we were told that someone would review the security footage to try and identify the culprit. When we got back to the room, the security guard went in first, making us wait outside. After a few moments, he told us that we could come in. When we started walking into the room, everything was back to normal. But the security guard led us to the bathroom. He showed us the message in the bathroom mirror that read, "Tell the secret, Anaya." The security guard thought that we were playing a practical joke. That wasn't until another security guard came running into the room. He was a bit out of breath, but he quickly said,
Can you guys come outside with me, please? We need to talk for a moment.
We all started to walk outside, and right when we got outside of the room, the new security guard quickly shut the door, saying that when they checked the security footage, he saw that someone went into the room, but they never came out, and they watched us go in minutes later. He said that they already contacted the police, but no one was found in the room when the police came to double check. The hotel offered us an upgraded room, but we had already decided that we would get our things and leave tonight. We gathered all of our things, made sure that nothing was missing, and went downstairs to wait for our taxi. The security guard stood outside with us, making sure that we were okay. When our taxi arrived, we put our things into the van and didn't talk much during the ride. The driver started talking to us. We didn't think much of it until we realized that he said,
I hope you four ladies had a great time here.
There was only 3 of us in the van. Shanice and I started to freak out. As I started to look around the van, I didn't see anything. That was until I looked in the back seat, and there it was, in the same damn red dress, covered in yellow polka dots. Its pale face was covered by that disgusting blonde hair, and it kept leaning forward until I couldn't see it anymore. I became frantic, quickly turned around, and made eye contact with the driver. I guess the look on my face let him know that we had an uninvited guest in the car, and something was dangerously wrong. Before I could even yell to quickly let him know to pull over, the figure bulldozed past us quicker than I could react and attacked the driver. This caused him to crash the car into a concrete highway barrier wall. We were all knocked unconscious. I was later woken up by someone screaming. My vision was blurry, and something sticky was seeping into my eyes and stinging them quite a bit, so I couldn't see who was screaming, but I knew it was coming from the left of me. I started to slowly move my head, trying to look around. I then tried to reach up with my right arm to wipe my eyes, but I couldn't move it. So I then tried to move my left arm, which was already pretty painful. I wiped the sticky substance off my face, only to realize that it was blood. This temporarily cleared up my vision. I looked over to my left to see Anaya screaming. I noticed Shanice was coming to as well. I saw that the creature was face to face with Anaya, its body pressed up against hers as if it was sitting on her lap. Its face was more demonic than before, but it still looked like that damn Susie doll. Then it started to talk. It just kept repeating,
Tell the truth, Anaya. What's the secret you've been hiding for 13 years?
Tell the truth.
Shanice looked around and finally realized what was happening. The thing didn't remove its gaze from Anaya, who was sitting in between us. It kept getting closer to her face, but it just suddenly stopped as it smushed its face on Anaya's left cheek. Anaya had turned her face and was looking at my direction. The car got really quiet just for a few seconds. Then,
Tell the secret, Anaya.
over and over again, until it started to dig its nails into her stomach, now with its mouth pressed up against Anaya's cheek.
Why won't you tell the truth? Would you rather die for it? Because I'll gladly kill you.
And take your soul like it did the others.
Shanice started to cry.
No, please don't. Anaya, just say it, my God.
Eventually, I just screamed, Anaya, tell the fucking truth. Would you rather all of us die? Just open your damn mouth and tell it whatever secret you have. Anaya looked at me, not terrified about the situation, but about what she might say. The creature started to dig its long, filthy nails into Anaya's stomach some more. Anaya continued to scream until she started to speak in a trembling voice.
I'm the one that ran over Joshua. I went out that night when everyone went to sleep and went to that party that Mom and Dad told me that I couldn't go to. I was drunk and I didn't see him in the street bending over to pick up his phone. I thought he died in panic, since no one saw me, I didn't think much of it, and I didn't know what to do. I just parked the car in the garage and went inside my room. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Jada, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do.
I just stared at her in disbelief while Shanice got quiet. Anaya continued to cry, eventually letting out a scream when the creature rapidly removed its nails out of her stomach. It backed up and smiled, saying,
Wasn't that easy? Tell him the truth?
And disappeared, leaving behind strands of blonde hair like before. We all remained quiet until I broke the silence. Joshua is in a fucking wheelchair. Everyone, including you, helped look for who did it. And you were the one that did it this whole time? Are you fucking kidding me, Anaya? I just can't. Anaya looked away and held her stomach in agony, crying.
I'm so sorry.
Shanice just whispered.
Forget what she did. Is that damn thing coming back?
I just replied to her that I wasn't sure. Anaya looked up with tears in her eyes and muttered,
That's what the man tried to tell us. That it would follow me, and if I didn't tell the truth, and it would make me, or take me.
I couldn't stay angry at her for too long, and eventually pulled her closer into an awkward hug, since I couldn't properly remove my seatbelt. I just told her that if no one knew, we weren't going to tell anyone now, and that she'll just have to live with the guilt forever. Shanice chimed in.
Well, we'll never talk about this again. Promise?
We looked over at each other and agreed. Then, we remembered the driver. We looked over and noticed that he was completely stuck in between the wheel and his seat. Fortunately, he was still out cold, so he didn't hear the whole encounter. We tried to get out the van, but we were stuck in the vehicle until firefighters came and cut us loose. We then noticed that the accident involved multiple cars. We started to look outside from inside of the car, and then we saw him with the same damn doll in the crowd waving at us. We got worried that it wasn't over. The man had the same lifeless expression on his face. This time his eyes were completely white, and the large creature was standing behind him and waving his arms for him. It looked at us, smiling wider than before, then it just disappeared in thin air. No one seemed to have noticed that it was there. We were taken to the hospital. We had some serious but not life-threatening injuries. We never spoke about what truly happened. We just told everyone that we had a crazy stalker that attacked us and followed us several places and finally caused this accident. I still take many vacations with Anaya and Shanice, but we make sure to keep away from everyone. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, hit your notification bell, and like this video. We will be posting more. Thanks!